All right. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. Man, I tell you what, I walk in this room and we have people already lined up to talk or rebut or share some divine wisdom, impart some truth. Hey, good deal, good deal. Look, I'm gonna do a little exercise here. If I should let Eric talk, let me shake these up. This is my new Urim and the Tumim. Give me. I'm sorry, Eric. No, I'm going to let you talk. All right, look, Eric, let me ask you to unmute and you just talk to us. Tell us what you got. Good morning, first of all. Shabbat Shalom. Did I get you?
I got you.
There you go.
I was going to defer to the young lady to my left, I guess, if you wanted to, but you might not want to go against the Urim
That's
now.
right.
And my little quick point before I forget and start my breaking fast was hearing from our Father. And this morning, following the triennial, as I do,
Yep.
was supposed to be starting my last favorite book almost now, Leviticus.
Okay.
And I thought, why should I read this? I've read it every year every 3 years for 20 something years. Let me go to Professor Friedman's book and see what he says about it as who wrote it. And you might guess it's all blue.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, this doesn't work. So let me go to the Haftorah. Well, I mixed up my Roman numerals in the Leeser Bible, and I went to 58, Isaiah 58.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah, instead of 48.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, well, all these priestly writings and everything else, and here Isaiah is telling us, I just went to screensaver, if you turn your foot from the Shabbat so as to do your own pleasure, and I was thinking, sounds like the priest. I guess I've decided I'm not going to read Leviticus this year. So that's my little story of how you decide of hearing from our Father.
You know, it's interesting too, though. Leviticus has some of the greatest material. One of the things that I find it's almost interesting. You mentioned Friedman. Friedman was asked once if you know that you're about to be banished to a desert island, and so they're loading up. I mean, they're about to put you on the boat, and where is it that you need to? You can only bring one book, and he said, no, 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 wait, you're only allowed to bring one chapter, and he said, of course, my book would be the Bible. He said, but what would be my chapter? And it's interesting because he said I would bring Leviticus 19. And Leviticus 19, as you know, according to the academics, is part of what's called the Holiness Code. And so some people believe that that in and of itself is one of the earliest strata. And, you know, one of the things that I find striking is that Leviticus 19 is what we call a 10-word intertext. It's very similar in its arrangement to the Ten Commandments, and we know some crossover. Obviously, my work on the Shapira fragments is something that's quite interesting, but nonetheless, you have these divine commands in Leviticus 19, and it's very similar, at least in its order and arrangement, to what we see in the Ten Commandments. You have some commandments that are very similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I see your hands up. So you've got the floor. Go ahead. These other wonderful people are waiting their turn patiently. If you had follow up.
That was it. I was just going to say that's how I learned, and now I can eat my goat milk kefir oatmeal for lunch.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Hey, that's good. Look, one more thing about the triennial. I've done a lot of research on the triennial cycle as well, and I find it to be one of the most important studies. And so if you know, if I think you and I have discussed that a little bit, Eric, but And I know you've done a lot of research on it and have been a participant in that reading cycle for a long time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you please feel free to share some of your insights on the Discord. Because maybe not everyone's following. Most people, I think, follow the annual cycle of readings, but I have on my academia page a I think, very well put together list of the triennial cycle readings. You may have another one. Mine is obviously people can download it and print it out and
Yeah.
keep
The
it.
one I
So,
have is similar. It's from what I remember. They folded, but it was, I believe, a Messianic congregation put it together from others out in the Northwest somewhere, and we got permission to use it and publish it uh, about the time that they folded. But our main reason when we started this was we can't sit down and read the Torah portion, which we wanted and had to do starting out new,
yeah,
in one sitting.
right.
So somebody said, "Hey, let's look at this one." Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Sound bites. You can read it, read the whole Haftorah, the accompanying psalm, which we found out there's a psalm enough for 3 years of reading
exactly.
Torah, and the Haftorahs, which all kinds of people add different things to, and still have time for visiting and talking and studying and everything else without not ruining, but
Yeah,
taking up the whole day.
that's right.
Yeah, so that's why we're here. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. One more point, and then I'm gonna get Clody. I'm not trying to make Clody just wait and wait and wait, but I wanted to say the triennial cycle is, I think, a lot of people, for those same reasons that Eric just mentioned, it does give you can read through it carefully, study it, mark it. And a lot of people might say, yeah, but I want to go with the annual cycle. I think that's what we should be doing. But what we now know is that the annual cycle of readings comes from Babylonian school. The triennial comes from the land Eretz Israel in the Second Temple period,
Yeah,
and we
I
know
know.
that from the Talmud. So anyway, it's a fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up, and I remember you saying that you follow those. So post those insights as you have time.
Will do. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Shabbat shalom, Eric. Clody, I'm going to ask you to unmute. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you for the class today. I'm really looking forward where this is going.
Yeah.
It's really having me on my feet. So after your class, I called my sister, and she told me, "Wait a second. You mean to tell me that Urim and Thummim are Urim and Thummim in English as well?" And I told her, yes. How about Hebrew? Are they Urim and Thummim in Hebrew as well? And I said her, yes. And how about in Greek? Yes, Arta, it's the same word because it's the same wording because they do not know what that means. And she was like, but Urim and Thummim means something in Albanian.
All right, I'm
And I
ready. What is
was,
it?
okay, and I was dumbfounded. I was like, oh no, 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 you cannot tell me that this might have Albanian roots. And she told me, yes, it might have, because, Indo-European languages are English and German and all Latin languages, but also other separate languages like Greek and Albanian are.
Yep.
And Albanian and Greek do not, believe me, I speak both of them fluently, they do not relate. Expect with some little no expectation. What's the exceptions?
Yep. Yep.
With some little exceptions. So Albanian is very, very ancient language. I would say that is almost as ancient language as Greek and perhaps as Aramaic.
Okay.
And what does Urim and Thummim mean?
That's what I'm waiting. You've got me on the edge of my seat now.
That's what you do every Shabbat to us.
Payback. I got you.
Urim means blessing, but a prayer for blessing.
All right.
I bless you means I pray that you have some blessing. Urim.
All right. Okay.
I wish you a happy birthday. Uroi, urim is the same root, the same verb. And tumbim means stinging. Like a bee stings.
Ah.
So it could be blessing and cursing.
Okay.
Now I'm not saying here that I'm the linguist. I'm not a linguist, I'm not the scientist, but it's food for thought how all of the languages in that area, and bear in mind that we are really, really nearby, all of us. Like
Right.
my country is right in the middle of Rome, Greece, and a little bit on our east is Turkey and then Israel.
I love
So
the idea. Yeah.
it might be that Urim and Thummim might have perhaps the only. So we do have some linguists in my country that we mock them because they try to make everything with an Albanian root, which is not true.
Right.
But if you cannot find any root in other languages, perhaps we could use Albanian.
Hey, I tell you, this fascinates me, especially because the proximity of peoples. So, as you said, it's not like in America, Urim and Tumim mean nothing. They don't. We just know the words as they appear in the text in that
Yeah.
transliterated form. But when you talk about a language group that is close regionally, then some of the greatest linguists and some of the linguistic works that I read will show Arabic similarities and how
Yeah.
different languages, how they are connected. Are you familiar with the what's the let me look, let me see if it's behind me somewhere. Somebody will remind me. It's called The Word, and it shows what's the guy's name? It slipped my mind. Anyway, he shows that a lot of these words around the world are Moseson. Isaac Moseson is his name, and
I'm not familiar.
he shows how a lot of different languages. If you look biblically and you go back to, say, Genesis 10 and 11, and how the languages ultimately branch out from the Tower of Babel, you're going to find a lot of connections back to the ancient words. So who knows?
Exactly.
It's actually a pretty interesting thing.
Yep.
Good deal.
That's what I had to share.
Well, that's excellent. And maybe if you get bored this week or something, I'm sure that there is a very good Albanian dictionary that if you look up the word in the Albanian dictionary, it might say goes back to an ancient Phoenician word. Who knows?
I will check. I'm not so sure though.
Be fun.
I will check.
Hey, I appreciate that insight.
Thank you.
Tell Arta we said thanks for her insight as well.
She's listening on YouTube.
Good. Oh, good. Well, hey, Arta, thank you. Outstanding.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Thank you.
shalom. All right. Let's see. Let's get Todd and Angel. I will ask you to unmute.
Shabbat shalom, Ross.
Hey, Shabbat shalom, my friends. How are you?
Oh, doing good. Continuing with the Europe and Purim thing, or Tumim.
Yep.
We were discussing this, I don't know, 3 years ago. When we started reading about it, and really have like what y'all was saying, really haven't heard anything about it, or even what it means. But the only thing that we can come up with, I wrote this note down. So basically, they were like flipping a coin. So Yahweh's decision was by a coin flip. It's just kind of how it seems.
Kind of a binary, yes or no kind of thing.
And you better hope that priest don't have a two-headed coin.
Yeah, you certainly do.
But that's just that's how I see it. It's almost like they were taking the decision into a flip of a coin,
Chance.
or yeah, chance. I don't know. That's just kind of how I saw it when we read it a few years ago, and I really can't find anything that gives me a different viewpoint of it.
Well, it's certainly very, it seems to be black and white. A lot of times when we read these biblical accounts, the questions are presented in a yes or no fashion. And that's kind of what we get, you know, when it says that so and so ask, shall I go against this particular group? And the answer is yes. No, that kind of thing. So a lot of now, again, we're dealing in the world of speculation because we simply don't know. It's as if by the time these stories were written, no one knew anymore. No one remembered. It's just not that much there. The earliest text that we have, I quoted from the Septuagint, which this particular passage, very interestingly, that First Samuel passage from the Septuagint, I think puts us closer than any to understanding what that means and, you know, how it was actually done. And we do know that the Masoretic text, sometimes it doesn't give as favorable an understanding as a Septuagint. And quite often, especially since the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we now recognize that the Septuagint in a lot of times reflects an earlier understanding of a text. So anyway, no, interesting. It does seem to be pretty binary, though. Like I said, I made me some, and it's not like I'm going to use them every day and base all my decisions on it. But just as an exercise, that's the only reason I did it. So
There you go.
hey, good stuff. Hang with us. Hello, Damon. Shabbat shalom, my friend. How are you? What? I'm sorry. Hang on. Let me ask you to unmute. That would help.
There we go. Shabbat shalom.
Hey, how are you?
Doing pretty well. So, really interesting class this morning. I had something which I hope will be as interesting as Claudi's. So, I wanted to share this picture with you of an example of a throne with cherubim on it. I'll just paste it in the chat.
Okay.
And this is from ancient Egypt.
Okay.
And the idea there is that you had these cherubim-looking things with wings spread out like this on the sides of the chair. Okay?
Yeah.
So the way the mercy seat is described on top of the ark, which is in, what is it, Exodus 25?
Yep.
It's described as a seat. It's a mercy seat.
Right.
So what I think is going on there is that, contrary to the way that the Ark of the Covenant is generally depicted with the cherubim pointing their wings at each other, I think this was a throne chair. Okay? I think this was literally God's seat, God's portable throne on earth, as it were, except there was nothing in the chair. That was where God would commune with the people. But I think it's really interesting when you look at Jeremiah 3, where it talks about at that time they won't say anymore the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord.
Right.
At that time, the very next verse, it says, at that time, Jerusalem shall be called the throne of the Lord.
Sure.
And I think that's because literally the Lord is actually there. So you won't need a throne anymore saying, a throne chair anymore saying, this is where you're to expect God to render judgment because, well, God is here.
Yeah, he's here. Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to share that. But I also wanted to go over to Acts 3 and ask you a question.
Acts 3.
Yes.
All right.
So Acts 3, starting in verse 19, repent therefore and return, that your sins may be blotted out, so that the times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord. And he will send Jesus Christ, which preached to you before, whom heaven must receive until the times of restoration of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all of his holy prophets since the world began. Now, in Ezra 2, it talks about a priest in the future having Urim and Thummim. Do you think that this restoration of all things would include Urim and Thummim, the Ark of the Covenant, etc., even though they won't be necessary if God in the flesh is there, will those things actually be restored? Things like the ark, the temple, etc.
No. No, I mean,
Okay.
if you ask, what do I think? So it would be to the same. First of all, you use there's some theological phrases in there. We may be on a different page on some of this, so I'm not answering no just because of that. But
Hmm.
as you put it, if there is, the priestly writers are very clear that the ark does represent a throne. It
Hmm.
represents a throne. Now, how literal is that? Certainly the people of the time, the enemies are even saying, here comes the throne. And if you read like in Numbers chapter 10, where you have this idea that the throne represents God's presence. But as you put it, if we look at these texts which are prophetic, where do we really believe that since Jerusalem is going to represent that throne, do you need an ark again, right? So you may be right on that in that sense. Like, why would you need it again? The other thing that I would say, whether a person accepts the New Testament writings or not, what I do think is interesting is that we get in the book of Exodus, I think several times, I don't remember exactly how many, we have this phrase called tavnit. A tavnit is a pattern. The Hebrew word is based, you probably know this, Damon. I know you study a lot, but it has to do with build. It's like a blueprint. So everything that Moses makes, according to the priestly writer, is because he saw a blueprint in
Hmm.
the heavens. So what we see when we see the ark or all of these various objects that are made, that's not the thing. That is a copy of the thing he saw, if that makes sense. So I
Yes.
think that my view would be we're not going to need some of these physical representations, the pattern, if again, I'm just going with what the priestly sources are saying. If we're going to have the real deal, you don't need the copy, right? And I think maybe that's kind of what you were saying with the throne. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I jotted down. Now, the mercy seat is a really bad translation. I think most people know that. It really just means cover. Mercy seat is a very theologically loaded translation, but it's just a cover. And on the cover, we do have a description of these angelic. I say angelic. It's not really. It's cherubim. I think to call cherubim angels might be a little bit more than what the text allows us to do. But Seth and I are currently working with a friend of ours, an author, a Bible teacher, a really fun person who happens to be really into the priestly literature. He's written books, and he specializes in the Ark of the Covenant. So how would you say, we're producing an interview of sorts with him where he's going to get into and show graphically, like you said, some of them depict with the wings pointed towards one another, some this, which way are the poles oriented? And that might be a fun one. I think you might like that. Quite a few others. We'll get into some of those discussions. But so not sure that I would agree. Are you saying that Acts chapter 3, in your view, do you think that we'll have another ark, another Urim and Tumim? What is your view on that based on your understanding of Acts 3?
I think that we should expect a restoration of all things prior to the return of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Because I think that's a preparatory stage, that basically we're reestablishing the kingdom of Israel. Then that kingdom gets interrupted. You basically get the death of the Davidic king at that point in time, followed by 3.5 years of tribulation, and then the Lord returns. So I do think that you do get that again. And I think what Jeremiah is basically alluding to is, wait a second, you guys are putting so much stock in the thing and not the God that's associated with the thing. And I think what he's basically saying is, you're missing the point. But neither here nor there. We might be on different pages on this. I actually wanted to go back to another comment that you made
But
about
before we do, can
the
we
pattern.
stay there one more second?
Sure.
Jeremiah 3:16.
Mhm.
This is the way it reads, and I want to make sure I follow the point. In Jeremiah 3:16, and when you increase and are fertile in the land, in those days, common prophetic announcement, declares the Lord, not Jeremiah, the Lord, men shall
Mhm.
no longer speak of the ark of the covenant of the Lord, nor shall it come to mind. They shall not mention it or miss it or make another. And then it says, to your point, at that time they shall
Mhm.
call Jerusalem throne of the Lord. All nations shall assemble there in the name of the Lord at Jerusalem. So I
Yep.
find it hard to now that, by the way, that doesn't mean, and I think this is what I wanted to clarify, if by having an intermediate stage, some group, the Temple Institute or some other group says, hey, we need to build an ark, we need to restore the temple. Is that what you're saying? That there'll be but it's not necessarily sanctioned, ordained by God? Is that it, or am I reading too much into that?
I think that what you'll see is literally the return of the original ark, the return of the original breastplate and Urim and Thummim. I think those things will be restored. They're hidden right now. But the main reason I didn't want to go into that so much is because I think we can really easily get bogged down in controversy. I just wanted to kind of toss out that that's my
Okay.
view and you
All
have a
right.
different view, and then delve into this idea of patterns, because I think that's a really interesting one where you're talking about Moses. He saw a pattern. So I want to go back to Genesis 1 and explore this idea of pattern, because in Genesis 1, I think we actually see that. Um, the word for heavens in Genesis 1 is Shemayim.
I think you
And
wrote
that,
something. You wrote something on this on the Discord. Am I right?
yes, and I
Yeah.
want to go in a slightly different direction. I think I included it, but I just want to repeat it here for the benefit of other people listening. That um, Shemayim is a derivation of the Hebrew word for water, mayim, meaning there's this celestial sea in heaven. You also have the constellations which are in heaven, which God appears to be mirroring on the earth. You have animals, you have birds, you have great sea creatures that are in the heavens. Okay. Job 37. Let me go back here, find my specific verse. Job 37:18. Elihu is asking Job, with God, have you spread out the skies, which are strong as a cast metal mirror? So, this idea in biblical cosmology is that heaven is like this dome, this like inverted dome with the stars embedded in it. And it's like a reflective mirror that reflects these things down on earth. In other words, they're patterns. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's quite a bit actually. It's not directly related to what we're going through now, but I appreciate it. I think that there is this idea of bringing heaven to earth. Isaiah 51 talks about something quite interesting. It's translated most often that God spread out the heavens, but literally in the Hebrew, it means planted. So some have understood that the idea that that which is above is that which will be below, and whatever is in heaven, is going to be brought to earth. And the Christianity brings this in for people who really study it, if they know what they're looking at, and they're not looking at a great escape out of this planet, but they would take that and reverse it, where Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua, would say that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I think that to that
Mhm.
point, I think you and I would probably agree that there is this sort of a reflection of, or an intended reflection of that which is above below. Now, what I don't know, and I think that this is a little bit more than we get into here, But in terms of the meaning of words Shemaim, and whether or not that is actually, even though it's spelled the same, Maim, and is somehow a derivation of Maim. I don't know that is. In fact, I know it's not. Everyone doesn't agree on that. But look, that's beside the point. It's interesting, and you've written, I think, for those who might have missed it, for those who really want to delve into that subject, they can certainly see that on the on Horeb. Is that fair? That they can go and have you had any feedback on that yet? Because if not, maybe some others might want to jump in that conversation.
A little bit.
Yeah, let's see about that. People that want to look at that are welcome to jump into that. I think that one of the most important things, to your point, though, is this idea of the Tavnit. I've always liked that. What does it represent? What does it mean when we talk about, say, the Ark of the Covenant? What does that represent? If we see a representation of it here, what does the one look like that Moses may have seen in the mount? Obviously the Christian writers take it one direction. The book of Revelation talks about that. So there's some of that. But in terms of the Hebrew Bible, my main point in this class is that the most important object in the world ceases to be talked about. Nowhere in the text does it say, and the Ark of the Covenant was taken away by the Babylonians. We don't get that. We don't get, and it ceased to exist. And what we do get is Jeremiah, who was alive at the time, saying, we don't have it. It's not going to be another one. We're not going to think about it. You're not going to talk about it, and you're not going to make another one. So I tend to go with that view and sort of just put a period at the end of that. Again, it doesn't mean that someone might try to make it, but I would even argue if somebody tried to make it, I'd say, which one are you going to make? Are you going to make a replica of the one that Bezalel and Aholiab made? Or are you going to make the one that Moses made? Because the book of Deuteronomy doesn't know anything about an ark that's got gold plating and beings on the top of it. In fact, I find that kind of strange that a box containing 2 stone tablets, at least part of which say you're not to make any image of anything in the heavens above or the earth below or the water beneath, that you would put on top of it some images. So, but that's just my view.
Then one other question. In Second Maccabees, it talks about the writings of Jeremiah was found that he hid the Ark of the Covenant.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's in my book. Yeah, actually, it says that Jeremiah is talking about, it's in 2 Maccabees chapter 2. Jeremiah says that there is a reference in a writing. He's quoting an oracle that Jeremiah took the ark and took it across the Jordan. That is one of the biggest parts of my story in my research. So again, the question becomes, which ark is it? Which ark is taken across? And what does it say about the law? And what do we know about the locations mentioned in that text? So 2 Maccabees chapter 2 is certainly worth considering, and that's why I made such a big deal about it in my book, because I think that one of the things that's, you have all sorts of theories. Some people say, I swear, the rabbi who parachuted in on the Temple Mount, and he saw it, and he, and then somebody else says, nah, it's in Ethiopia, it's in, Menelik carried it away, and we've got all these different theories. But Jeremiah, to your point, 2 Maccabees says that he hid it away until a certain time when it's going to be brought to light. And there are other things that are also hidden. So I think that is an important text. Yeah, check out what I say in the book. I think it might be interesting to you.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Good stuff. Thank you, Damon. I appreciate your inputs. And Karen, let me ask you to unmute. Did I do it? Let me try that. There we go.
Okay.
How
Can
you
you hear
doing,
me?
Karen? Yep, I can hear you.
Uh, I always want to caution people when asking God for a sign.
Yeah.
I did that one time, I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Because you gotta be specific. You can't just leave it open-ended, like, God, I don't know what to do. Give me a sign.
Right.
Not like what happens later. Next. Anywho,
Hey,
um,
let let me ask you one thing on that. So what I took these two little things, yeah, and I was busy. And my wife was doing something yesterday, and I really didn't have time to take a break, but I knew she really needed help. So just for fun, now please, nobody get mad at me and hate me and think that I'm sacrilegious. But I had just made these Urim and the Thummim, and I'm reading about how it might have worked. So I said, okay, if I'm supposed to help my wife do this thing, she didn't ask for help. I mean, that's in my favor. She didn't ask me to help. And she said she could do it. In fact, she said, I know you're busy. I don't need your help. But I knew she needed my help. But I said, let me see. If I'm supposed to help Bridget, let the olive come up. And so I had my little bag and I shook them like this, and I'm serious. And I know this isn't the original Urim and the Thummim, but I said, do I need to help my wife? And sure enough, Urim comes up. And so I said, well, I mean, that could have been just chance. Best 2 out of 3. God, if I'm supposed to help my wife, let me draw that same one again. And it popped up again. So I did go help her. You'll be happy to know. I'm not saying that was God giving me a sign, but I bet you that my day went much better yesterday because I helped her. Whether I didn't tell her about this, and she would say, I can't believe you did that silliness. But so anyway, I'm sorry, Karen. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah. Wait a minute. I think I might have to. Did I lose you?
I don't
There
know,
you
did
go.
you?
Yep, there you go. I'm sorry. Go.
And then I was just gonna say I always have this idea that, and this is just my own imagination, that the tablet that God wrote on,
Yeah.
maybe it looks like some kind of picture jasper. You
Some kind
know
of
how
what?
picture jasper. And I only say that is that it's a stone. Um, there's an artifact, I think I put it in the Discord a long time ago, that was found, and it was said to be part of the priest's outfit or something. And it was
Okay.
like a recent beryl or an onyx or something, and it had some kind of symbolic writing on the inside. And I
Mm.
couldn't figure out how. I mean, it tested as very ancient.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out how that got inside there. And a picture jasper is like, it's a stone, and you look at it and it has a picture in it. Usually it's a pastoral scene like rivers and mountains, and it could be just about anything that you see in it. And so I always imagine that one of, the tablet that God wrote on is some kind of, it's not necessarily carved into the stone, but it's part of it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you on that. I hadn't heard the phrase picture jasper, but you did a good job explaining it, so I think I know what you're talking about. There are various speculations as to what those tablets would look like and how they would be and so forth. And I think we tend to think a lot of us are influenced by the movie The Ten Commandments, or from our Sunday school and from the drawings, and there are these two big old stone chiseled out, and it's very ancient. And in one sense you go, well, that's probably what it looked like. But again, what if, and I'm going to hold up my tablet. I have a tablet, and I know this is, people are like, there's no way. There's no way that the God of Israel could make something that cool. That took somebody like Steve Jobs. But, how could, but here's the thing, is something that you can write on with your finger. And I don't know, it's crazy. James Tabor and I often joke about that. But what if it's something more than, just stones, with the way we tend to think about it. We don't know the size. We don't know much about it. And when it comes to the breastplate, even if you study the breastplate, especially if you get into like what do the rabbis say, and all these different they're just ideas, we just don't know. But could it be that certain letters would light up, or certain words were spelled? I don't know. I mean, I don't put it out of the realm of possibility.
Right. I suppose you know it when you see it.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. And the stones and the order of the stones. Just yesterday, my mother, who is a very good student of the Bible and taught me all kind of good stuff growing up, but she sent me. She happened to be studying the breastplate and the value of the stones and the names of the stones and the different colors, and she's into all kind of cool stuff about the stones of the breastplate. And so we had a nice little conversation. And I usually approach things sort of a pashat. This is what it says, and my mom is able to look at different, maybe deeper things. I'm not there yet, but it's an interesting study. What do we really know about these objects? I think the answer is we don't know much, because honestly, they've been gone for so long. Even in the Second Temple period, there was no Ark of the Covenant in the Second Temple period, because to Damon's point, and many of you know this if you studied like Maccabees, this was been gone. I mean, the time of Jeremiah, it's last seen in the time of Jeremiah, and so maybe that breast piece is also been missing that long. Who knows?
And I asked Rabbi Google what's missing from the Bible, and he said it was 22 books.
22 books.
Yep.
He's saying that 22 books are missing from the Bible.
Mhm.
Well, Dr. Google, I tell you, that's interesting. It's funny that Google would say 22 books. Let me touch on that. Josephus and many of the early Christian writers, when asked about the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament as they might call it, said that it consisted, Josephus and others said this, that it consists of 22 books. Only 22 books do we consider sacred, and it was tied to the enumeration, or the numbering of 22, that's so prevalent in the book of Jubilees, copies of which we found at Qumran. Roughly, scholars date the book of Jubilees to about 150 BCE. And it says in the book of Jubilees, I'm paraphrasing, there are 22 acts of creation. There are 22 of this, 22 of that, 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And so there are 22 books whereby God communicated his will to man, or something like that. So you go 22, well, the Christian Bible has 39 and the Jewish Bible has 24. But if we look at the earliest arrangement of the books of the Hebrew Bible considered sacred, I guess you would say, it would be, interestingly enough, 22 and not 24, and certainly not 29. And for some who might be confused about that, if you look at the prophets, you got Hosea, Joel, Amos, Nahum, Micah, and so forth. They're called the 12. Well, in our Bibles, the Christian or the Old Testament, I say our Bible, what I grew up with, you have each of those listed separately, where in the Hebrew Bible, all 12 are one book called the 12. So Google is confused when it says 22, but someone else wrote me a comment on my video. I get some interesting and some hateful and some good and bad and ugly in the comments. And somebody wrote me and said, you remember my video, Following Jesus Out of Christianity? That the person said, so it's a good thing that you at least are looking at the Hebrew Bible, but you need to do people love to bark out orders to me. You need to recognize that there were 94 books that were excluded, and you need to be studying those. Why are you still reading the books that the Jews gave you? And I was like, well, I didn't answer the person yet, but 94, Karen, 94 books we now have to read and study.
That's a lot of books.
That is a lot of books. Hey, good stuff. What else, Karen? Picture Jasper.
Picture Jasper.
Is that what you called it?
Yep. You can look it up. It'll
I'm
have some kind of picture in it.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it
Right.
up and see what. Look, you need to make you some of these and go through your day. If you have questions, you just kind of.
No, I don't need to
All right.
do that.
All right. Hey, good
Okay.
talking to you. Shabbat shalom.
Hmm.
Todd and Angel, unmute thyself.
Mute thyself.
That's right.
Just wanted to chime in on what you were discussing with Damon earlier about what the Hebrew word says
Yep.
versus translations. And it kind of made me chuckle earlier when you mentioned in Samuel about the hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
And as soon as you did, the first thing I thought of was, what does that really say in Hebrew?
Right.
And it's actually your ashes, your dirt, your tears, and images. So how they get butt pimples from
Yeah.
that, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't know, and I haven't really done an in-depth study on it. And I think usually when I read it, like a 12-year-old boy, that comes out in me, and I kind of snicker and I move on. Maybe I need to take the time and look that up. But yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it?
That is. Now, mice is in there. But as
Yeah.
far as that, I mean, I was like, how do you get that?
Well, again, I think sometimes, if I remember when I did look it up, it had to do with the people were afflicted with sort of a plague. It sounds like, we might think of the bubonic plague or something where they have swelling, tumors, that sort of thing. And so, but again, I haven't looked that up in a long time. So you're probably coming up with something much closer to what it says, because I hadn't looked at it in a while. But either way, the bottom line is the Philistines want that box out of their territory. They don't want anything to do with it, and they want to get it back to those Israelites.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Just throwing that out there.
All right. Good deal. Miriam, Sister Miriam, I have just clicked the ask to unmute. If you can unmute. I see you're unmuted. How are you today?
Shabbat Shalom.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom. How are you?
Hey, why can I get in Zoom but not Discord? Okay, that's just
I
over my.
I don't know, but I think you're right. It is Zoom works well with Miriam, and the other's not working so well.
Right. My question is, according to Exodus 31,
Yep.
18,
Yep.
where it talks about Yahweh and the testimonies he wrote by his finger.
Yep.
Moses, it says, he gave Moses the 2 tablets and the testimony tablets of stone written by the finger of the Most High.
Yep.
Like Nikita says, okay.
Yep.
But at that time, wasn't it 17 languages?
Okay. All right. I know where you're going. There is a legend that the words were spoken from the mount in 70 different languages. That comes from the Talmud, and there's a reason for that. According to the rabbis, the 10 words were communicated, offered to the entire world. Now, we're dealing with the world of legend, Miriam. We're not dealing with the text. But the idea, and you can find this in Every Man's Talmud. There, you can get that on Amazon. I don't have a link to it, but Every Man's Talmud, there is a story that's recorded there. It's from the Talmud itself, where as God speaks from the mountain on the day of assembly, from the midst of the fire, his words divided into the 70 known languages. Now, why 70? Because in Genesis chapter 10, if you count the nations that are therein listed, they come up with 70. So the story goes this way, that it goes out, and one after another, the people of the world said, I don't want that. I can't live by that. And then, according to the Talmud, the Jewish people said, oh, we'll do it. and so that's the story. Now in the Bible, it doesn't say. Obviously, the Masoretic text and our earliest manuscripts are communicated. These stories are communicated in Hebrew, but understand that the children of Israel had been in Egypt for several hundred years, couple of hundred years for sure. And so people debate what language was it spoken in? Could there be some truth to maybe a couple of languages, or when the words went forth, maybe because it's not just the Israelites, but some of the mixed multitude. How fluent in each of those languages were the people of the day? Now, one other point, and I know we have Christian friends on here as well. We know from the Hebrew Bible that this period is known as Shavuot, which in Christianity is Pentecost. So there is some sense of connecting between the New Testament writers and the story of the giving of the law, in that they both happen on Pentecost, on Shavuot. And if you remember in Acts chapter 2, some of you might have to go back a while to memorize or remember this. It's that everyone heard in their own language, see? So hopefully that helps a little bit. Now, what language were the 10 words written in? It's a tough question. I believe that our form of Paleo Hebrew, an ancient version of Hebrew, doesn't go back far enough. That grew from what we might call a Proto-Canaanite language, maybe a little bit more pictographic. But again, we're speculating. I wish we had the two tablets, we could see it. But does that help at all, Miriam?
Great. One more thing.
Okay.
Can you explain the difference? And I've heard it through many teachings through the years. Masoretic text versus hieroglyphics versus Hebrew.
Yeah.
Explain what all those mean and how they're different.
Yeah, it can get a little bit confusing. We're talking about a lot of different, the convergence of a lot of different languages. So basically, Hebrew has been around probably at least since, and I'm talking about, there was an evolution from, say, Phoenician and Canaanite language into what became biblical Hebrew. Language changes over time. We know this. So I think that first of all, if I were to transport back in time with my Hebrew Bible, my BHS, and I were to pop up in the middle of the Israelites, and I said, maybe Moses and I could speak, and I showed him what I had, I'd say, hey, check this out. And you might be interested, Moses, because I have this iPad and I can search for words in what you wrote. That would be an interesting conversation. But I wonder, first of all, Moses would not recognize the forms of the Hebrew letters in my Bible. He just would not, because that came much later. Now, so you have the Phoenician and Canaanite languages, and ultimately these different scripts that we know now, but anciently that wasn't the case. And so, but the Masoretic, when we talk about the Masoretic text, that is the work of the Middle Ages, scribes in the Middle Ages who were using what we call square script or Aramaic script. So that is a late developed script, but it's not paleo. You've seen, like, I have paleo in my book, but this is a paleo. Let me put it on the black of my shirt. This is a paleo letter. It doesn't look like the Aramaic script at all. But for instance, in the biblical period, when we find inscriptions, when we find like the Siloam inscription, many of you have heard me give lectures on the Siloam inscription, or the Mesha stela, the Moabite stone, Paleo Hebrew. But we know that prior to that, we have sort of we have earlier text. And so you've got Proto-Sinaitic, you've got Proto-Canaanite, you have all of these different scripts. We have inscriptions that have been found in the desert, in the Sinai region, where workers are actually writing and leaving evidence. I have several of these inscriptions and academic works on these inscriptions. So I know that that's a lot, but what we see is that there is an evolution of these different scripts, of these different texts, and ultimately we use Hebrew to represent the biblical text now. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Is that okay?
Shabbat shalom to all.
Shabbat shalom, and it's good to hear your voice. And as Dave and Patty said last night, we're going to keep checking into, try to figure out what's going on with your with the thing on Friday nights. Not sure what that is. So,
Thank you.
all right, have a blessed day. All right, so now let me ask Betty to unmute. How are you, Betty?
I think I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You did unmute.
Great. Great. I'm not sure what happened today, but I couldn't get on. So I got on through Facebook. So my name doesn't say Elisheva, but that's okay. Y'all know who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a question, actually a couple of questions.
Okay.
One is there not a reference? I've been looking for it and now I can't find it. Maybe I just imagined that I read it and I don't want to imagine anything that's not actually in the Torah, that the tablets were inscribed by the finger of God. I know I did find that, but that they were inscribed on both sides, like through and through.
Yep. You ready?
Is that where is that?
That's the first reference is 31:18 of Exodus. The one you're talking about
I found that.
is chapter 32, verses 15 and 16.
Okay.
Open that up.
I thought I'd read it. I guess I just missed it by a little bit. But my comment and question regarding that is that perhaps the reason the ark is no longer going to be needed with the tablets is because the Most High is going to write them on our hearts.
Yep.
And if he will write them on our hearts, like he wrote the first 2 tablets of stone, then they would be written through and through, like all the way through us. And to me, that's a phenomenal thing to think about. I can't even imagine that image.
Yeah.
That they would be written through and through on our hearts. And when something is written all the way through, you can see it from both sides. You can see it any way you turn. Yeah. And so his presence will be so completely in us that, to me, that's totally amazing. I love that concept, and I hadn't really thought about it before. My next thing is that, do you think perhaps the ark is missing with the tablets, so perhaps that etching may already have begun in some of us who are truly seeking him?
I hope so.
I do too.
I hope so. And I think, I want to say yes. I want to say that the examples are so prevalent, and you all represent some of that, at least in my understanding. I mean, look, let's face it. Most of us, if not all of us, I don't know that everyone here started their walk in some form of fundamental Christianity, and we've come to this place, whatever this place means to each individual. But what's happened is as you know, if we all did a testimony time, stand up, brother or sister, and give your testimony, we would be both blown away, I think, and amazed, because the stories are all unique, but how many of us would say the same things? Like, I don't know, Betty. I was just reading my Bible and I saw that the Sabbath, or I saw that I should only eat certain kinds of food and it,
Mm,
I mean, I think all of us remember we've told the stories. Dave has told his story at Easter, when he and Patty told his mom that they weren't eating pork, for the first time. I remember
mm,
when I first read it. So again, my point is, where did that come from? Many of us, have been drawn towards a more Hebraic way,
mm,
and I think that quite possibly, in Jeremiah 31, where you're talking about with this writing on the heart, I find it interesting that in Jeremiah's day, several things happened. The Torah that Moses wrote was discovered. It apparently read differently than what others were saying that Torah was. Over and over, I've taught this where Jeremiah says, he's speaking on behalf of God, saying, I put my Torah before you. I put my Torah in your midst. Jeremiah says, when your words were found, I ate them. They're talking about a real thing that happened. The real
yes.
Torah was found. But
Mhm.
then Jeremiah, by the way, during the discovery, 2 Kings 22, 23, 2 Chronicles 34, 35, no mention of the ark at the time the Torah was discovered. It doesn't say, I have found, Hilkiah doesn't say, hey, I found the Torah. It
Right.
was sitting right by the ark. It's not mentioned except for one little place where Josiah says, hey, Levites, you don't have to carry this on your shoulder anymore, as if they've been carrying it
Mm,
forever. Go put it up. Uh, but Jeremiah, interestingly enough, tells us that the ark is gone. It's not coming back. We're not going to make another, and you're not
right.
even going to talk about it or think about it. And he also says, not only does he say that the ark is, but he says God's throne is going to be in Jerusalem. And by the way, his law will be written on your heart. Could it be that by that time the ark and maybe the Torah is missing, and maybe like Damon brought up a few minutes ago, this passage in Second Maccabees, maybe they were already smuggled east of the Jordan to avoid being stolen away.
Mm. Interesting. Yes, that is interesting. Another thing I just happened to read in my in a commentary that I have. It's actually a Jewish commentary.
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking for those verses, is that have you ever wondered why there were two tablets? Why two and not just one?
Right.
Well, the explanation given is that they were inscribed on two tablets instead of one because they testified that God rested his presence upon Israel, and testimony must be rendered by two witnesses. And so the two tablets allude to their dual nature. The
Right.
stone was from the earth and the script was from heaven. I like that.
Yeah.
I just like that picture and that analogy.
I do
And
too.
so I just thought that was good, and so in a sense, if and when the Torah is written on our hearts, then I mean it. It reminds me of the verse in Malachi, how we'll all have one heart and all be connected. We won't need two tablets anymore. They will be converted into one because they'll be written on our hearts. That will all be one heart.
Yep.
Is that confusing, or do you get what I'm saying?
I think I get what you're saying, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of this that we don't know for sure, but some of it, like you say, we read it and we think, I kind of like the way that sounds. That might be it.
Well, it may be it. It may not be, but it's something to think about. And I do think that I always come back to the passage, two of them, that talk about the secret things belong
Yep.
to God.
Yep.
And also that his ways are above our ways.
Right.
And so if I come to something and I hit a stone wall and I just don't understand, instead of getting all hot and bothered like I used to,
Yep.
I I pretty much just say, well, okay, it's okay. I don't have to understand it. It's maybe that's just one of the secret things that's not for me at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I used to think that I had to know everything about the Bible, Hebrew Bible, Christian writings, Apocrypha, Deuterocanonical books, Dead Sea Scrolls, and I mean, it's just a lot, and I can only comprehend so much. So I no longer feel like I have to know everything, and I certainly don't know everything, and so a lot of times these interactions that we're having are beneficial more than we realize because it makes us consider the opinions of others. Like you brought up, why would there be two tablets? There are different options. I think most people tend to think, well, on one tablet were the commandments about our relationship with God, on the other is our relationship with mankind. Some have said, as you said, and we know this from the ancient Near East, that it could be the way these ancient treaties were done, that on one tablet would be written exactly what's on the other. So you have front. If we go with the passage, you also brought up the question: where does it say on both sides? And if we get the idea that Exodus 32, 15, and 16, maybe, again, listen, maybe on one tablet it had the covenant written on front and back, and then the other tablet is a duplicate of the first tablet. I mean, do we know? We don't know. We don't know.
Right.
Something to think about, though.
I think, let's see, Marianne just wrote that our hearts have two chambers, and that's interesting too.
Yeah.
So there's always something. But anyway, thanks for this, Ross. It's
Hey, thank you.
enlightening and eye-opening, and we will hopefully be forever learning. Once we think we know it all, then we have to start unlearning the things that we thought we knew because we find out that they're not true.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there. I have been there plenty of times.
So have I.
That's all right.
Anyway.
Hey, I love it though. What else would we have more fun spending our time on than the most important subject matter on the planet? I mean, this is it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, I love you, Betty. Have a beautiful Sabbath. Damon, let me unmute you or send you a approval to unmute. All right, brother. Welcome back. Hey, you moved.
Yeah,
You went somewhere else. What happened?
I just moved into another room.
Okay. All right.
So someone mentioned in the chat, they quoted Zephaniah 3:9 that at that time would be given a pure language.
Yeah.
And the comment was made in connection with the two tablets of stone. So I wanted to shed a little light on that because I think what's going on there is they're actually referring back to the story of the Tower of Babel.
Sure. And
shed some light on what was actually going on at the Tower of Babel, because I think it's really obscure for most people. It's just really confusing. So first of all, the word Babel, it's given a pejorative meaning in the Bible, but it doesn't actually mean confusion in the original language. The Akkadian word means gate of God. So what was going on was they were labeling not just the name of a city called Babel, but they were also labeling the Sumerian ziggurats that they built as Babel.
Sure.
So if we're to look for where the location of the setting of the Tower of Babel wasn't necessarily in the city of Babel.
Mm-hmm.
We only have one ziggurat that was left incomplete. And that was during the Ur 3 period of Sumer, and that's circa 2000 BC, thereabouts. And during this time period, there was a lot of Sumerian literature produced. And one of that literature actually sheds light on the idea of this confusion of languages. It's the legend of Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata, which he says, I want to go and conquer this land of Arata so that the whole land can all worship, can all praise the sky god Enlil with one language. So what I think we have going on with the Tower of Babel is that we're worshiping this pagan god by force of arms. And what Zephaniah is referring to in contrast, and I think it explains it in the rest of the passage here, is that the pure language has to do with all praising God together,
Yeah.
not with a single language, but all praising God together and all calling on the name of the Lord together and serving him with one accord.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that out.
No, good stuff. And I like what you're doing there is you're looking at ancient Near Eastern customs and culture and writings to find the insights into the biblical text. And others have pointed this out. The idea is that if we're really trying to understand what's going on in these stories, which are at least presented as taking place in ancient times, we have to go there. We have to look at what are those early sources. And to the other point, if you look at Genesis 11 and you look at Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9, there is a conversion of language element to that as well, but I think that it clearly connects the two. So in whatever it means, whatever Bavel means, they are trying to push the pejorative where it has to do with confusion. You know, Babel. So some scholars say, well, this is written during the Babylonian period where they're ascended to supremacy. And so those who don't like Babylon are saying, well, let me tell you about those Babylonians. They're just a bunch of confused whatever. But the idea, though, is that it says that the languages were confused, multiplied. So you have all these different languages and they can't communicate. Whereas Zephaniah, apart from the observations that you just made, it says that God will at that time convert to a single lip, literally one language. So it is interesting, and it's funny because a lot of people who teach Hebrew have used this in the past and said, look, get a jump on this because ultimately everybody has to learn Hebrew anyway. You might as well start learning it now, right? But there are a lot of times, in a lot of cases, Damon, as you point out, an ancient Near East setting to some of these debates, and it's really fun to find those. So I appreciate your input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to add that in, and also identifying the whole story of the Tower of Babel with this Earth 3 period, not like being written centuries later in Babylon, gives us a lot of insight there. Right after that ziggurat was left unfinished, which was during the reign of Amarsin, about 2046 BC to 2038 BC, within a few decades, the Sumerians were scattered. So there's your scattering, okay?
Yeah.
What was going on basically was he was saying, yeah, the language did die out. Sumerian was actually used after that by the Babylonians, but as a dead language, they were using it for astrology. But I think what he's mainly referring to is what was confused is their worship. Instead of just being forced to worship one sky god Enlil, now they have the freedom to worship whatever the god of the land is where they are, where they've been scattered to. So just interesting thought there.
Yeah. And you might want to post a link to those. Sometimes when we look at these comparative religious texts, a lot of people aren't familiar that there is a whole branch of study out there. So, sharing that kind of thing on the Discord is helpful as well. It gives people sort of a background, sort of a way to anchor the text to other ancient Near Eastern literature and so forth. So appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And Carolyn, I'm going to ask you to unmute. All the way from the smack dab middle of France. How are you, my sister?
I am just fine, Ross, and hopefully my microphone is working.
It's working wonderfully. Your voice sounds beautiful. Nice to hear you.
Thank you. When it comes to language, I'm not sure that we're all going to speak the same language, because Revelation 22:2 tells us that there will always be nations, not just one, but nations, and they will require healing. And a spirit being does not require healing. People, physical people, require healing. So it seems like that when God says that his kingdom, there will be no end, there will be no end because people will continue to be born. They will continue to be nations. And as long as they obey God, they will have blessings, they'll have rain in due season, everything that comes along with obeying God, they'll have if they obey the true God.
Yeah. No, good observations. Let me take that just for a second and say, yeah, I agree. Because if you look at, we have all of these different stories. For instance, Zechariah 14, where all the nations have to send delegates to Jerusalem to worship the one God, who is, by this point, Zechariah 14:9 is like a universal Shema. In that day, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh will be king over all the earth. He will be one and his name one, sort of a universal Shema. But you're right, you still have these distinct people groups. And so it's not necessarily that everyone will be speaking the same language, though some have interpreted that Zephaniah 3:9 says that. But, I'm often reminded, if you look at the United Nations, and I know that a lot of people aren't fans of the United Nations, but think of it in terms of what could be. If we call it United Israel folks because our founder, David Horowitz, was so much part of that, he called it the Parliament of Man. But imagine, if you will, sometimes I'll watch video clips that took place in the United Nations in the General Assembly, and everyone's wearing a headphone like we are, like this, and someone is speaking in Persian, and the translator, everyone hears it in their own language. In fact, I just watched a guy's name is Youssef. He's called the son of Hamas. He was born into the Hamas group. He's giving a real sharp, stinging lecture, and the two guys in front of him from representing Arab nations, they're listening as he blasts Hamas, and they turn around like they're in shock. What if somehow in the world to come, maybe people do continue to have their own languages, but there is this coming together. Damon was talking a little bit about this. You're kind of bringing up the same. Is that what you're thinking, that maybe there is a coming together, but maybe the languages and the people groups remain distinct?
I think that they remain distinct because if they all spoke the same language, their culture would eventually be the same. And they would no longer be distinct nations.
Yeah.
But your point about them sending delegates to Jerusalem, the whole country doesn't have to go to Jerusalem to keep the feast. The delegate has to appear before the people. And I think a lot of us who are not involved in the military or haven't had military fathers who knew about the chain of command, etc., Christ is like the aide de camp to God. When Christ or the messenger shows up, everybody knows that the messenger is speaking for God. And if the messenger says jump, their response is how high? So these delegates that are sent or requested to come for the nations to Jerusalem, their responsibility is to take back to their nation what God gave at the feast or said at the delegation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If they obey, they will have rain in due season. They'll have good crops. They'll have healthy babies. All of this stuff will accrue as a result of obedience. But I don't think they're ever going to lose their distinctness, which means their language needs to stay their language.
Yeah. No, I like this idea, and I think it goes to this idea that, whether a person is coming from a Christian background or just the Hebrew Bible alone, the idea is that the whole world is not to become Jewish, air quote, but the world, we get several hints that ultimately there will be a positive association with Israel. That's certainly now we're more in a stage where we see in the prophets that all nations will assemble against Israel. We get this. We have people marching in the streets, and and so forth. But ultimately, what do we see? We see, at least in Zechariah again, Zechariah 8:23. 10 men from all the languages, notice, all the languages of the nations will grab the kanaf, the hem of the garment of a Jewish man, saying, "We'll go with you because we heard God is with you." So it's not that they're converting, and it's interesting that even at that stage, Zechariah 8:23, to your point, we're still talking about they retain their individualistic nationhood, if you will. Now, I believe that there is a reason that we're dealing with 10. I've taught a class on 10-1, the reason for the ratio. Quite possibly that has to do with the 10 tribes, people from among who are scattered among the nations. Maybe they've lost their identity and so forth. It is, as we know, the most common theme in all the Hebrew Bible is the restoration of the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes and so forth. So, but they come from different places and they have different languages. And as we say as I said in Sunday school as a little boy, red and yellow, black and white, they're precious in his sight. It's not like you're going to look at someone and go, you must be an ancient Israelite descendant because you have the right nose for it, or you have the right skin pigment. God loves variety, or we wouldn't have what we have. And so I think that's a key. Good stuff,
Agreed.
Carolyn.
One more point to what
Yeah.
you just said. I think of creation, knowing what we know about DNA, as the little wind-up duck that you take the duck and you wind up the key on the back and you let him loose on the top of the table,
Yep.
and he wanders over to the edge, and something makes him turn around and go so he doesn't fall off.
Yep.
God set in motion DNA, and every one of us is unique. The only people who are the same are twins that are identical. Everything else is individual.
Yeah.
And God wanted it that way, or he would not have put into us the combinant DNA and the ability to create ad infinitum individuality. So he doesn't want us all to be the same.
Yep.
From the very beginning, we were never created to be the same. He appreciates uniqueness, I think.
I think so too. And like we're basically saying, if he didn't appreciate uniqueness, we would all look and act and sound and whatever the same. So and look, speaking of that, we can be united and be different. And this is what I love about this group. Most of you know that theologically, I don't associate with certain theological points. And yet, some of you do. And we can all come together and we can have discussions around the things that we're all interested in and we're all dedicating our lives to understand. And we can respect one another and we can have dialogue. That's what I love about this group. It is a uniqueness each of us bring to this journey, our hopes and dreams and desires to find God and to find truth. And we're not going to all agree, and that's one of the things that I love about this. We're a unique group in that sense. I think we really are. So I appreciate your comments, Carolyn.
Thank you. Have a good Sabbath.
Hey, you too. Have a beautiful day. I've got to visit France at some point. If I do, maybe we can go get some coffee or something.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Carolyn. Let me ask Todd and Angel to unmute.
We good?
Yeah, we got you. We got you, my friends.
I'm going to turn topics around here a little bit, get back to what you were saying earlier in Deuteronomy 31 when you was reading about where Moses was mentioned about putting the scroll by the ark. And it's interesting that I kind of read the rest of it, was going on there, and I found it to be interesting where he says, I know how defiant and stiff-necked you are even now, while I am still alive in your midst. You have been defiant towards the Lord. How much more than when I'm dead? Gather to me all the elders of your tribes and your officials, that I may speak these words to them, and that I may call heaven and earth to witness against them. And that got me thinking. Okay, so the words he's speaking to them, is that all 5 books? Because how are they going to remember that? And they better have a lot of time to listen to them.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought up an interesting question, is if all they had was the covenant scroll and not the 5 books, did they still qualify as righteous to obey only that and not the Torah that we have today? And that's an interesting point.
I tell you what, that sounds exactly like something right up my alley, because that's what I'm looking for. In other words, what was in that covenant scroll? Deuteronomy 31, if you notice, we skipped right over verses 10 to 12. And 10 to 12 basically says that a certain time of the year, you're going to come together, and on the 7th year, during the year of release, you're going to gather everyone in the community, and you're going to read the words of HaTorah Hazot, this Torah, in their hearing. And so you can imagine, you get everybody, you get all your kids. I have 6 kids. They're all grown now, but, 9 grandkids. I could see them all. It'd be like herding cats. You guys have cats. I mean, it would
Too
be
many.
Yeah. So, but here's the deal. It's like, can you imagine? You're like 603,500, and however many males and females and shit, and you're going to get them all together, and you're going to say, okay, kids, did you y'all got to go to the bathroom before we go, because this is going to be a 24-hour service, and I don't want to hear anything about what are we going to eat. We're not going to eat until it's over. We'll stop by McDonald's on the way home. Look, it's a long, long time if we're reading 5 books, but that's not what we get. That's not the idea that we get. We get this idea that it is a shortish, is that a word? Shortish document. And what I find interesting is that that's what the text suggests. And we see the same thing in Nehemiah chapter 8. In Nehemiah chapter 8, they gather together from morning until midday, and the scroll of the Torah is read in their hearing, and they have time for some dialogue back and forth. I see Doug Martin is on with us. He's often on with us, but he wrote an article quite good. By the way, Doug, I know that it's been a long time since you sent me that link, but we've been so busy with the move and everything. But I did read your article, very well put together. And if you can post it in the comments here and or on the YouTube link, I think people would get something out of that. Well, I know they would. Also, put it in the Discord. If you don't, I will. I just won't do it right now. But one of the things he covers is this very question. What is read? What is it that's read before the hearing of all the people in Deuteronomy 31? So I didn't mean to cut you off and go on that stump speech, but yeah, it's something to think about. What is it that's being talked about there in Deuteronomy 31? Again, it's a third-person account, but it does have some elements in there quite interesting. So,
well, it also got me thinking too. It's now let's say it's Deuteronomy that he's giving the elders and everything. Well, why would he give them a history they already know?
Yeah.
So that's, again, could it be the Moses scroll? Could it be maybe something else that was part of that may be lost in the shuffle? Don't know.
or an early, even if somebody says, well, I don't know about this Moses scroll, but even if you said it's an early form of Deuteronomy or the earliest, the original, whether somebody knows about the Moses scroll or not, it's clearly not, he's clearly not talking about Genesis 1 through Deuteronomy 34:12.
No.
And I can say that without any equivocation. It's not like I'm saying, well, I think this. Because some people might say, "Oh, here goes Ross. You think you know, but that you're not right." But I'm right on this one. Anyone who reads it will know. It's not. I don't have to be smart. I just need to know how to read, and read carefully and be honest with the text. So, what
Not
is
only
it that
that,
they're
but I mean,
reading?
as far as we know, Deuteronomy is the only thing that could have been written while Moses was around. We know the other 4 books was later.
There's certainly signs within those books of later editing, and that's, again, it's not coming from a perspective to deride the text or to mock it or to make fun of it or to take away its sanctity. It is simply a matter of being honest with the text, and so that's what we're doing here. And look, if anyone thinks that I don't love and appreciate and respect the text, please don't get that impression, because that's not it at all. I'm looking for, like all of you, a clear, concise understanding of the truth. And we're going to get into, by the way, this next class is going to look specifically at the question of, is the Torah of the Lord the same as the Torah of Moses? What does the Bible say? And I'm really looking forward to this class. I think it's going to help us as we continue to dig deeply to get the tools to find what's that early strata of the text. What does that look like? And it's more than a fun exercise. It is a quest for nothing short of the truth, I think. That's the way I would see it.
Yeah. And of course, like I said last time, is we all have the same information.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there's no definitive answer. You can just speculate, well, says it here, it's got to be this.
Yeah.
Deductive reasoning.
Yeah.
Deductive reasoning. That's right, Angel.
College word here, yeah.
That's right. That's right. No, Angel, you're exactly right. It's almost the text. When we read the text, the text are drawing us towards certain conclusions based on what they say. Like I know sometimes people will write me pretty hot around the collar. Everybody know that expression, kind of hot and bothered or hot around the collar, but that's just your interpretation. I'm not interpreting anything. I'm simply reading it. It says the scroll of Moses was lost. It says they found it. It says the people that are witnessing in that text said, we hadn't done this stuff right since the time of Joshua. I mean, that's not me. I'm not making that up to make fun of the chain of custody. I'm simply reading the book. It's deductive reasoning is the way that you read a text and you allow the text to speak in its own words and not the words of some fundamentalist whack job. That's my view.
That's the infallible word of God.
That's right. And that's the thing. We're searching for answers. And, like someone wrote me the other day and they said, well, do you think you're suggesting that the priesthood went off the track? And I'm saying, I wanted to say, my God, man, have you read the Bible? Yes, I'm saying that. Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, do we think that the monarchy was an example of what God really wanted? I mean, if you think that, we haven't read the Bible. If we think that the priesthood or the cult was what God intended, we haven't read the Bible. So people tend to defend as God's way the things that God says, you rejected me, you chose this. And how many people say, Ross, you're saying that the monarchy's not from God? I'm saying, yes, I'm saying that because it says that in the text.
Yeah.
So it's amazing when we believe the text. It's amazing that the conclusions that we come to are greatly different are vastly different than what fundamentalism says in all its forms.
Yeah, you speaking of kings and stuff like that. That's a few years back. We we got to study into the like what Samuel went through and Israel voting for a king or all that kind of stuff. Kind of got us thinking. It's like, when we go to vote, we're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so that kind of put a break on that. I mean, we used to be big into the politics thing and everything else, but once we started realizing that, we actually felt convicted of that.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're doing the exact same thing Israel did.
Well, and one of the things that I have made it sort of a point of doing is avoiding, because we're so divided. Like I jokingly say, I make enough enemies with my theological views. If I start getting political on here, I won't have a friend left in the world. And it's not like I'm like trying to get a lot of friends, but I'd like to keep the ones I have. So, but to your point, broadly speaking, politically, I don't care who you like or vote for. I do, but I'll tell you I don't. But the bottom line is, if you read the biblical text, there is an underlying thought that your systems of governance, where you want to exalt a person and claim my guy or my gal, as the case might be. That way, both of you are okay, all of you. Whether you like a man or a woman in America whatever. Here's the deal. Do you really think that person is going to fix the world? I love the story in the book of Judges. This last week, because I'm working on something, I read Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel very, very closely. And in Judges, there is what we call the oldest parable, and it's about the trees went forth to appoint a ruler over them. Read that and think the political world, not just America. I'm sure it works in Canada and France and Great Britain and, everywhere.
It brought to mind the old Rush tune, The Trees.
Yeah.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, I like Rush. I like some Rush. But if you think about it, it's the bramble. A lot of times, let me say a lot of times it's the bramble that said, hey, you looking for somebody to be in charge? I'll take that gig. So we have to think about that. But
there's unrest in the forest.
Yeah, I always tell people, whatever you think politically is your business, because like I said, I make enough people dislike me as it is. So. Hey, good stuff. Good stuff, man. Y'all have a beautiful day. I'm going to ask Betty to unmute, and I think we're going to let Betty kind of wrap things up for us. So take your time, Betty. Make it count.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, I hear you.
Okay. I know before I said that when I come to a wall, I don't get all hot and bothered. And I'm not hot and bothered. It's just that I've come to another wall at this point, and I would like to see if you can help me over it. And if not, it's okay.
All right.
What the deal is that I agree with what Carolyn was saying and what you were saying about we each have our own uniqueness, etc. That's how we were created, and that's important. Yet, and she was saying that we'll keep our own language, etc. So how does that mesh into Zephaniah 3:9 when it talks about that, that Hashem will convert us to a pure language or one lip? How can those two things go together?
Yeah, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. So, for instance, this is just my view, but first of all, Zephaniah 3:9 does mention that he will convert the peoples to a single lip so that they may all call upon him. Okay.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's important is there is a view that that means that at that time, whenever Zephaniah 3 takes place, that
Right.
every person will be communicating in Hebrew, Mashlom Ka, Mashlom Ka,
Okay.
and people are, and so the Africans and the Americans and the Canadians and the people in Australia, because they don't really speak English, you can listen to Jono and get that. But the idea is that everybody will be leave one language and be converted to a single language. Whereas I think the point that we were discussing, at least I was discussing, is I can believe that people can have that ability to speak another language, Hebrew in this case, but that when they go back to their home,
Okay.
that they can also, like in Zechariah 14. Now that's just a thought. Is it one view that I used to hold very strongly is more of a total switch that
Mm.
it's a that what we see in Genesis 11 is a curse, a confusion of the languages, and that Zephaniah 3:9 indicates a reverse of the curse, so that everyone then gets one language. Now, I don't know which one of those is right, because we really only get that one text.
Right.
But it's up for discussion. I'm open for either way. I'm trying to
Mhm.
learn Hebrew well enough to get along anyway, but I would welcome God just zapping me where I can speak Hebrew and understand it fluently. That'd be a whole lot easier.
Well, so would I, and I was going to make that point that many of us are attempting to learn Hebrew. At least for me, learning it the correct way.
Yeah,
Uh,
me
but
too.
that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up on my English, which is my first language.
That's right.
The other question has to do with, and I think I may understand it by going back to the Hebrew, and that is from Micah 4:5,
Oh
which
yeah.
I know you have talked about before,
Hmm.
where it says basically, "For let all people walk, everyone in the name of his God, and we'll walk in the name of our God."
Yeah.
And then it says it's translated forever and ever, which is Leolam Va'ed. But my understanding is that unlike what most of us have been taught prior, Leolam Va'ed does not mean forever and ever, but it means for this time.
Yeah.
Is that correct
Um,
or not? For
well,
this age.
it would certainly be nice if that were really true, because then we wouldn't have to explain the theological difficulty there. But
That's
but
true.
to your point, if we say the olam does mean exactly what you stated.
Hmm.
Ve'olam is like until an age,
Right, until
basically,
an age.
and an age, and an age. When you say va'ed, ve'olam va'ed, it's aid means until. So it's like you
Right,
go, well, to an age until, and it's like in Hebrew, that idea pushes you out so far that you can see why the writers or translators would say, yeah, it means forever. It's the unforeseeable future.
right.
So in that sense, I think that that's correct. But what is interesting, that passage is quite fascinating, that even in that context, that what we get is the writer is saying, we tend to think of it like, well, this is a doctrine that in until an age or forever, that everybody's going to walk in the name of their God. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding, but I think without
Mhm,
looking at it, I remember it being the writer is a worshiper of Yod He Vav He, and
mhm.
this person is saying that others will walk in the name of their God, but
Right.
we will walk in the name of our God forever. In the past, I've kind of thought of that as, is that suggesting that into eternity there will be people walking each in the name of their God? It's difficult.
Maybe it's a progression.
Maybe so, and maybe
That,
as you have the nations who are going to Jerusalem to participate in Sukkot and the feast, who are in a way converting, not to Judaism per se, but converting to
No,
the one
the
God.
heart. Right.
Maybe there'll be enough of those that, and some that aren't getting rain, that those are walking in the name of their God, but they better have their tail in Jerusalem for the feast if they want rain, you know.
Absolutely.
Comes around once a year. Better get it while you can.
Okay. Well, I'm in my 80s, as y'all know, and I'm still asking questions, and I probably will until my dying breath.
Hey,
So,
keep on asking, because you're also coming up with some good answers, and I hope that you and I are able to communicate in the Hebrew, and God doesn't
mm,
have to give us as much as some others who hadn't
mm,
started yet. Who knows?
God willing.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks,
Hey,
Ross, and everybody. Y'all have a great day and a good weekend. A
Shabbat
good week.
Shalom.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom.
All right, Miriam, I'm gonna unmute you, and I'm only letting you talk because you're my favorite. I've already said this was over, but don't tell anybody. But how you doing, Miriam?
Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
That's okay. That's all right.
Hello again to all. Just one little quick question so we can end it.
All right.
Hopefully it's quick.
All right.
Okay, this age we talk about until,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and it's called the Olam Haba, and it's one language. I spoke of earlier about what the 70 languages, so it's going to be now one. Okay, please. I've heard so much about the Olam Haba and have no understanding of what that word means. Please give me a little understanding of it.
All right.
Thank you.
We're gonna help each other out. I'm with you. I've heard that used and abused and translated and mistranslated. Olam haba means simply the age to come. A lot of times in religious circles, we tend to think in the term of the world to come. The popular magazine, The World Tomorrow, acts like there's going to be a whole new world. Now, although Isaiah talks about a new heavens and a new earth, when we talk about Olam Haba, in Judaism, it's the age to come. So you have this age that we're presently living in and the age to come. And then over and over in the prophets, we see various phrases such as, I quoted some earlier where Jeremiah says, in days to come, in that day, at that time. We're talking about a new age. And in that new age, thankfully and prayerfully, things will be different. It's the image that the prophets get us is that it's gradual. So it's not just like you wake up and you're in the new world and you go, oh, it's a new age. Everything is perfect. The wolf and the lamb lie together, and the lion eats straw like an ox. And I woke up, and this morning I'm in perfect health, and I'm strong, and I don't have any flab, and I'm in great shape, and my hair is growing back, and everything's magically made perfect. But that's not what we get in the biblical text. We get a graduation gradually from this age into the age to come. And a lot of these things that come to pass, we call it eschatology, the study of end times things. A lot of these things come over a longer period of time. But age to come is the best way to translate that, Miriam. And you think about, again, this age and the age to come. The age to come, we have a vested interest in it going right, and we can help bring it about. How do we help bring it about? The Bible is very clear. Part of that is like we were talking about earlier, where heaven and the principles of heaven are planted in the earth, so that which is done in the heavens, that we say it like this: your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I think that the age to come, one day I think we're going to be having these conversations. We might be in a Zoom call, and we'll go, I'm looking around, I feel like we're in a new age. I think that it doesn't have to just come suddenly. I think we realize that we're in it, and we start noticing things around us, because a lot of times we wander through life like this and we're not really watching. Maybe the kingdom of God comes that way, where we just realize that we're in it, right? And we've helped bring it about. So that's the goal. Bring heaven to earth in this world, in this age, and in the age to come. Does that help at all, Miriam?
That's a great perceptive I never had. And it gave me this thought, here now, but not yet.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Shabbat shalom to all.
Shabbat shalom, my friend. Look, it has been fun. It's been a wonderful time. I hope that all of you will enjoy your week, that you'll have a week full of blessings, and that you'll join us next time, next Saturday. Remember, we're talking about, is there a difference between the Torah of the Lord, the Torah of Moses? We're still on a quest to find what is that authentic message. So Shabbat shalom, Shavua tov. Have a beautiful week. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.